Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Performance in Partnerships Exchange webinar for Achieving a Low Food Assistance Payment Error Rate. We are going to go ahead and get started now since we have our panelists on the line, and it looks like many of our attendees have started to join as well. We want to give a special thanks to all the counties who participated in Performance in Partnerships Exchange visits this round. We had Mesa, Boulder, Arapahoe, Fremont, Douglas, Rio Grande, and Washington counties that all we visited all during the past several months to learn about their practices related to payment error rate. And today we have 3 of those counties on the line who are going to share an overview of their practices for achieving a low payment error rate. So welcome to Douglas, Rio Grande, and Mesa counties. My name is Sharon Zanti, and I will be one of your hosts for today's webinar. I work within the Performance Management Division at CDHS, and our team produces the county CSTAT dashboard that you see every month, as well as develops projects like this Performance in Partnerships Exchange. And now I'll go ahead and let my counterpart, Colleen Nieto from SNAP Quality Assurance, introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Colleen Nieto. I'm the SNAP Quality Assurance Unit Manager. Our unit is responsible for conducting federally mandated reviews on SNAP cases. I've been in my current role for a year and was a reviewer prior to taking this role for 5 years.
Thanks, Colleen. So here's a quick agenda for today. It's really pretty simple. We're going to start with a quick overview of the Performance and Partnerships Exchange project. We'll talk about the per CSTAT measure, and then we'll move into the bulk of our presentation, which is hearing about successful county practices and sharing some ideas that you may be able to take back to your counties. And at the end, Colleen will wrap us up with some of our key takeaways. Throughout the presentation, we'd love for this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, go ahead and start typing them into the chat box. And after each section, we'll do a little pause and take as many questions as we can before moving on to the next panelist. So what is the Performance in Partnerships Exchange? We call it PPE informally, and PPE is a county peer-to-peer exchange focused on improving performance on county-facing CSTAT measures. Its purpose is to create an opportunity for counties to learn from one another and to highlight successful practices that may be able to work in other counties. The focus measure is voted on by the CHSDA, or the County Human Services Directors Association, and then the lessons learned from each round of PPE are typically shared in a webinar like this and sometimes other materials. So let's dive into our review of the current CSTAT measure that we're focusing on for this Performance and Partnerships Exchange. This time around, we've been looking at the food assistance payment error rate. And this past June, the directors voted that we would work towards improving performance on this measure and learning about how counties that are successful in achieving a low payment error rate, what processes they have in place. So this dashboard here, I know it's probably a little bit fuzzy for some of you out there, and I apologize for that, but this is from June 2017 when the directors chose to focus on this measure. And you can see that across the board, food assistance is really successful, particularly in timeliness. We're green all the way across for the dashboard that we're looking at here. But when we get down to payment error rate, we can see that as a state, we're in the red. Before we move on, let's do a quick recap of what payment error rate is and how it's measured. Every month, SNAP Quality Assurance pulls a representative sample of food assistance cases from all across the state. And when your county is sampled, the payment error rate is measured by looking at the total amount of misauthorized dollars in your sample over the total authorized dollars from that month's sample for your county. So the top number is the amount of dollars in error, and the bottom number is the total dollars authorized from cases sampled in that month. And a little bit later, Colleen's actually going to share more about the SNAP Quality Assurance process. So if you have any questions about that, Colleen will be able to answer them for you. So getting to the current statewide performance, this is the most recent county dashboard. So it looks pretty similar to the last one we looked at, where timeliness is a huge area of success thanks to all of your hard work. in processing cases timely. But still, payment error rate has actually been going up since we looked at this data in June. We have the latest sample on here from June 2017, and the payment error rate is at 15.3%. So this is still a challenge for us as a state, which is why you've probably seen or participated in other efforts that are ongoing to improve payment error rate as a state. And this webinar is one of the many ways that we're trying to do that. And we hope that you can use this as an opportunity to ask questions of your peers and to take away some strategies that might be able to work for your specific county populations. So my office in the Performance Management Division worked with SNAP Quality Assurance and the Food Assistance team to choose counties to visit that had strong performance relative to their like-sized peers with a mix of size and geography. And today we're going to hear from 3 of those counties. We have Douglas, Rio Grande, and Mesa County on the line. And we're going to start off with Douglas County today. So I'd like to introduce our first presenters. We have Raven Stewart and Gabrielle Fisher, who are both eligibility supervisors in Douglas County. So I will turn it over to the 2 of you, and we'll let Douglas County speak more about their practices.
This is Gabrielle Fisher. I have been in eligibility for about 5 years now, and with Douglas for almost 3.
And Raven Stewart, I am also an eligibility supervisor here. I have about coming up on 12 years experience, I think, in Colorado with Human Services. I started in El Paso County and then came to Douglas County almost 9 years ago, so I've been here for quite a while. So that's us. Okay. All right, so I think this doesn't require a whole lot of explanation. These are Douglas County's numbers. We have one of the big things that we did in order to improve our timeliness, especially with redeterminations, is what we found is that we were waiting until close to the the pen date just to work redeterminations, and then struggling to get 200 redeterminations processed in a few days. And so one of the things that we did is we actually now schedule all redeterminations into a block of time with workers, so that workers have scheduled times in order to complete those, and we're basically working them as they come in. And so at this point in the month, we've already worked almost all of the December, or looked at most of the December, and what we found is that also then on the back end gives us more time if the client turns stuff in to rescind those cases or redetermine new information if needed. And so that's really helped us make sure that we're able to get our redeterminations completed timely, and has taken some of the pressure off of workers as well. And so, it also has helped, I think, with our error rate as well, because they have that time in order to look at those redeterminations and kind of take their time. So again, just to clarify too, we only schedule the redeterminations that need interviews for interviews, but we still are scheduling all of them for a block of time to be worked. So that's kind of that in a nutshell.
For training and kind of communication with our teams, for all of our new employees, we have them shadow almost the entire team, and then they work to kind of find the person they best kind of learn from, because we know that everybody learns a little bit differently. So if they find somebody that they have good communication with and that they understand their teaching style, we tend to have them sit with them a little bit longer than the other team members. We want them to experience everybody, because everybody does something a little bit different and has positives, but then have the way that they learn best be the way that they focus on continuing to shadow and work with that individual. We also do kind of group team meetings that all of our errors that come back for SNAP, we do go over individually if we see an individual who's continuously doing the same error, but every single error that comes back we talk about as a group. in our monthly team meetings to identify kind of what went wrong, different practices that we could do to correct that, because we found that usually if one person's making the error, other people usually are as well. And then in those monthly meetings, we also have our leads discuss errors that they're seeing in their case reviews or any policy updates or extra tips that they come across in those meetings each month.
Okay, so we also attend various state meetings, supervisors, and mostly supervisors, some leads, but also webinars and things like that. And then again, bring back the materials and we share that with the entire team. We do a lot of one-on-one training and cross-training. And then also we encourage our staff to become really familiar with policy and to not just depend on CBMS. I think it's important to know what you should have as an outcome so that you can know if CBMS is right. We also have very frequent informal group discussions about policy. So sometimes we found that interpretation can vary across workers. And so we have, you know, kind of small group discussions, I guess I'll say, you know, a certain policy or, you know, someone's interpretation, and then try to, you know, get to, you know, why and what the best consensus is. And then if needed, we also reach out to the food assistance policy box on a regular basis for guidance if we can't figure it out.
And then kind of going back to the training, so all those new employees, they start off with being 100% on pre-authorization. So a leader or supervisor has to review those cases, and we gradually decrease that based on their performance. But after that period of time, all the staff have a certain percentage that just randomly go to pre-auth to kind of catch random moments. And then we have gone kind of back to an old way of doing our case reviews and up to 4 cases per month we're doing to ensure that we have a variety of cases to look at and review with each individual worker. I kind of talked about that, the post case. Yep, 4 per review already, sorry. Yep.
So that's kind of our system. I think it's just a lot of working together, utilizing resources, utilizing the knowledge base as well of, you know, some of our experienced staff to help teach the less experienced staff, and you know, utilizing group meetings and training materials as well. I will say also that we just recently have started, you know, providing lots and lots of desk aids and things to people to create individual notebooks for themselves, and just lots of training materials. So that's kind of us.
Great. Thank you, Raven and Gabrielle, for sharing all of those insights with us. I'm going to pause for a second to see if we have any questions coming in. And if anyone out there has questions specifically for Douglas County, please feel free to type them in at this time. And actually, it looks like we have one right now for you two. The question is, how do you manage the time needed to conduct the pre and post authorization processes?
It can be a struggle, especially if we have multiple new people at the same time. But we utilize each other a lot, I think, because we're the only 2 supervisors for the team. And then also our manager will help step in, and our leads will help step in for all of those pre-authorizations. We kind of divvy it up to make sure that we're catching all of those. And then the post one, we actually just kind of, on the slide it said that we were in a tiered system and we're moving to 4, and we found that that was easier to manage because we're not kind of having to count how many errors there were each month. We're just, there's a set for each month that we have to do, and then we make a plan if we find somebody's needing more time. But we utilize our lead workers quite a bit for those.
And specifically, who is responsible for post-authorization reviews? That was another question that came in.
The supervisors and lead workers are the ones that are completing the reviews, the post-authorization reviews, so the case file reviews.
Right. And we have another follow-up question for you. Do you notice the difference between a time when you didn't do these pre and post authorizations and now when you do?
We have done those I have been a supervisor here now for about 1.5 years, and we've done those consistently since I've been here as a supervisor, so I can't speak to the numbers, what it was before, but I do know that being able to identify, we've seen certain people that, continuously tend to make the same mistake, and so, being able to identify areas of, of a certain weakness with with one person maybe allows us to kind of target training in one-on-ones and things in order to make sure that everyone understands. So I don't know what our numbers were, 3 years ago or so, or 4 years ago before we started doing this, but it's kind of, Douglas County has done, pre-auths for quite some time, so.
Great. Any other questions for Douglas County? All right, well, if you think of any, all right, actually we have one more coming in for you guys. How are your reviews pre and post authorization tracked, and what systems are you using to complete the reviews?
So for the pre-authorization, so when a new employee is on supervision, all of their cases coming to pre-auth, we have a spreadsheet for each worker during that time period that we track each case that is reviewed, what it was, and then if it was correct or if there's an error, and then if we send it back to them to work or when we reviewed it with them. And then for the case review, we have something similar. We just have a whole team-wide Excel spreadsheet that we utilize throughout the entire year to track to make sure that each team member is getting the same amount of cases reviewed and the same things, what it was, what program, if it was correct, or if there was an error and when it was corrected.
Great.
We don't have I don't know what, when I think of system, I guess that would be our system. Yeah. Never mind. Sorry.
And do you do that in Google or Excel spreadsheets?
Right now it's Excel.
Okay. And another question came in for you. How long is someone at the 100% pre-auth review? So how long are they considered a new worker?
It depends. So anywhere from, once they have started processing cases, they could be on SUPAUTH for, 4 to 6 months, depending on, how many errors we're still seeing. A strong worker who, is able to get through the trainings and the staff development center trainings and has a really good grasp on kind of what they're doing and they're producing quality work. They may come off 100% SUPAUTH a lot faster than maybe somebody who, is kind of struggling to understand the concept. So it really is just based on an individual. We look and see how many errors are they having, and so we don't take them off 100% SUPAUTH until we are very confident that the work that they're going to be, authorizing on their own is going to be accurate.
Great.
And we kind of gradually go down too. So it'll go to 100% to like 75, 50, 25, down to the minimum. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I remember when we visited you all and learned about that practice, that's something that really stood out to us is how you hear it and gradually people come down off of that, but that everyone, no matter how experienced they are, still has some level of pre-authorization. And I think that is an excellent practice if it's something that your county is able to implement. All right, well, I don't see any other questions for Douglas coming in at this time, but we will, if we have time at the end, circle back to them. For now, I would like to go ahead and transition to our next presenter. We have Sherry Swain, the eligibility supervisor. Sherry, is that you? Are you there?
Yes, yeah, this is Sherry Swain, and I have been with Rio Grande County for 13 years, and I've been a supervisor for almost 12. I have 7 techs that are determining eligibility for SNAP. 4 of them are family-oriented cases. 3 of them are adult and disabled case workers. And then each of those are split by alphabet. So we, I think, are probably one of the fewer counties that still does an alpha split, but it works for us. I do also have my new workers on 100% pre-authorization review. I don't have a lot of turnover, but I did have a new person come in this year. And she did a 100% pre-authorization. I've just taken her off. She's doing really well. Another thing I do is I really stress using wrap-up before they authorize a case. All my workers, they are just, you can just basically see everything going on in the case in wrap-up. Is the income correct? What you think you entered in calculating the benefit or calculating the income, doing that work on the 10 key and seeing if it's matching up. Also, is the shelter deduction correct? The rent, mortgage, taxes, insurance, any of those, are they all correct? Also, the number of household members. We are an employment first county, so sometimes we have an adult in the household that may be on a sanction, and so they have to make sure they're looking at that stuff. Is everybody counting correctly? Is all the household members that are supposed to be counting in there? And eligible students. We have a college nearby, and so we do have some people in our county that are attending college. So we just try to make sure that we're looking at all that stuff in wrap up to prevent or try to prevent any errors that may come up. So I think that has been really good as far as having such a low PER rate, because we're trying to do that stuff ahead of time and catching those things before we authorize. It's easier to catch them before you authorize than after and try to fix a case if a client was over or underpaid a benefit. Also, when it comes to case file reviews, we have, I do reviews. We have a LEAP worker, so during the LEAP season, she obviously does LEAP, but in the off season, she does strictly food assistance reviews, so we can keep her full-time year-round. Also, our quality assurance person does food stamp reviews, and we try to do 4 to 6 per worker per month. And we're sort of informal about it. We do have a review tool that we use. I believe it's from the state. And if we do find an error, we take that tool, that paper to the worker and explain to them what we found, and then just kind of go over it with them. And then all my employees try to do the best they can. So I've never had an issue where they haven't corrected it or taken care of it right away. So it's pretty informal. And then I think we do go back and look to make sure it is done. It's not like we're not checking, but they do want to do a good job, so they do correct it right away. Also, rules can be interpreted differently by different people. So we try to, if we find errors that are coming up quite a bit or just seem to be a trend, we try to go over the rules with everybody to review, make sure we're all understanding, to make sure we're all reading it or interpreting it the way we need to be. We reference training material, desk aids. Also, my unit is they're very close, so they talk amongst each other. They work together very well. If they have an issue or something doesn't seem right, then they don't have a problem with asking a fellow worker to help or to sort of talk through, bounce stuff off of them. So that's really good because each of us, I think, remembers things differently or remembers certain things and others don't. So we have a lot of that where we use each other to sort of try to get through a case or a difficult situation as far as not sure if a case is working right. When it comes to training, I have new workers shadow my seasoned workers. I have really, really good seasoned workers and new workers. And so the seasoned workers are very good at showing the new ones how to process a case, how to do interviews, because they've done it for a long time. And then once they've done that for a while, then the roles are reversed. They have the new worker do the interviews, the data entry, all of that, while they're watching that person. The seasoned worker is watching that person enter everything and go through the interview and making sure that they're catching on, doing what they need to do. And I think that's worked really well because it gives them the opportunity to do that and have someone sitting right there if they have a question or not sure about something. And so it's been a good process. I also prioritize having all of my staff members attend webinars and trainings when possible. And if they can't attend or something comes up, then we make sure we share the documents and the information with those that aren't there and sort of tell them the certain important points that were brought up in the training. Also, because rule can be interpreted differently by different people, we will use the state policy inbox email. And when we do receive a response back, we try to forward that to everyone so we all have the same information from policy regarding that question. So I think that's been helpful too. And also it's probably not, they're not getting 5 emails from the same county on the same question. Another practice that we do is a couple years ago, I implemented having walk-ins. So when a client comes in applying for food assistance, they can be seen right away. We live in a rural area and we have several small towns in our county that are a good 15, 20 miles away. So sometimes transportation can be an issue because we don't have public transportation. So when they're coming in applying, we don't want to tell them you have to come back 2 days from now to have an appointment. So we try to make sure we see them that day. And a lot of my techs are processing the applications while they're there, while the client's there. And if we have to, we are calling, we're picking up the phone, calling employers, calling landlords to get that collateral contact and get the information so the case isn't pending for verification and the client's right there and everything we try to do everything right there. Another thing we do is we are required to have 1 interview a year with households on food assistance, and we really utilize that rule. If we get a redetermination and we don't see a lot of changes, they've provided everything, or we can verify stuff through a collateral contact, we just go ahead and process it. However, if we do see someone turn in a redetermination and they seem to have a job that ended and didn't report it and a new job or different household members, we will pick up the phone and call that household and ask them, hey, you have some changes, what's going on, we need to talk about it, you need to let me know, when all this took place and how this all is going to affect your case. So we really try to do a lot of stuff on the front end so we're not sitting waiting for verification. I mean, it never does completely go away, but we try to do a lot of stuff ahead of time and get as accurate information as we can. So I think all of those have helped in our PER, you know, having such a good rate. And also my employees really care about their job and they want to do the best they can. So that's pretty much overview of what we do.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Again, we'll pause here and let anyone type in any questions they have, particularly since you're able to share the perspective of being a smaller county in a rural area with, you identified some of the unique challenges that your staff and your clients have to go through with food assistance cases. So anyone, if you have questions for Sherry, we'll take a minute for you to type those in. All right, I don't see any questions coming in right now. Oh, actually, sorry, we have a question. So how do you do walk-ins with caseloads? Who does the interview?
So it's been a little bit of a challenge, but we still adhere to the caseload. And if that person in that alphabet is not available or gone for the day, we have backup. And, you know, inevitably it does happen. And we have someone sick or take vacation or whatever the case may be. And I try to split out the walk-ins and the caseload among the entire unit so that not one person is getting bombarded with the missing person's casework. So I try to explain to my staff that we all take our turn having to be gone, having something come up, getting sick, whatever the case may be. And so, you know, it's important that we pick up the slack and work together to cover for each other, because we all will have to take our turn doing that. So it's worked fine, it's worked good. And like I said, I think the key is just trying to split it out and not going to one worker and saying, hey, today you're covering Christina's caseload, just you, because that can be overwhelming. So I think splitting it out has been the key.
Great, thank you, Sherry. All right, any other audience questions? Give you another minute to type some in. All right, well, if anyone else has questions for Rio Grande County, we should have time at the end to follow up with any of our county partners. But for now, let's go ahead and transition to our third and final county presenter. I'm going to welcome Michelle Trujillo, the Economic Assistance Division Director from Mesa County, representing our large county partners.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Trujillo, and I actually got my start working in eligibility programs many, many years ago as an income maintenance technician back in Larimer County. I then later joined Mesa County in 1996. Where I have had the opportunity to work as an eligibility specialist, a supervisor, and then move my way up to division director. So I've had the opportunity to see quite dramatic changes in policies, procedures, and caseload sizes over the year. And on this next slide, you can see our food assistance payment error rate for the last several months has been pretty awesome at 0, but it hasn't always been this way. In fact, we currently are under a corrective action plan from our July 2017 SNAP management evaluation, because we did end the federal fiscal year 2016 with a payment error rate of 5.17%. So today I'd just like to share with you a few of the strategies that we've used to improve our accuracy in Mesa County since then to address that error rate. So pre-authorization is a strategy that we use to ensure our staff are proficient in their work before authorizing benefits on a case. So when we hire new FTE or full-time employees or temporary staff, we put them through policy, systems, and procedures training on site. And during that training, then they move into hands-on training. And while they're in their training, and then for a certain period of time following the completion of their training, these staff are placed on 100% pre-authorization case review. What this means is the worker does the work, then they mark the case not complete, and then they pass it on to the trainer while they are still in training. And once released from training, these reviews are completed by the individual supervisors where these staff are assigned. And we review the entirety of the case, not just certain targets, because we want to ensure thorough proficiency before staff are released to authorize cases on their own. Our process is for the new worker, like I said, to mark the case not complete and then hand the paperwork over to the supervisor. So it's not a fancy process, but we have been able to accommodate that pretty easily. The supervisor or the trainer, whoever's doing the review, will note any corrections that need to be made, and then they pass the paperwork and the review tool back to that employee for correction. And then once they make that correction, they show it to the supervisor a second time to ensure it was done accurately, and then the employee is given the green light to authorize. And we do use the same process also for our seasoned staff if we have a worker moving from one team to another. So, for example, if we have an ongoing worker that is moving to the intake team, even though they're a seasoned worker, we do put them on 100% pre-authorization review at that time for a certain period of time to ensure that they are proficient in their new role, because it is a little bit of a mind shift change to move from intake to ongoing. And we don't really have a standard period of time for an employee to be on 100% pre-authorization review. It really just depends on how quickly the individual attains proficiency to a level that's satisfactory to their supervisor. And somebody had mentioned earlier how we track, and we're similar to Douglas County in that we just use an Excel spreadsheet to track our reviews and the proficiency of staff. Okay. Excuse me. So as far as case file reviews, we utilize two different methods to randomly select cases. And every month we will send our supervisors, or actually we allow our supervisors the opportunity to go off site 2 full days a month so that they can complete case reviews and in an environment where they're free of interruptions from phone calls or people coming into their office or whatnot. And those two different processes are to either randomly pick a day of the week and review all cases that are processed on that day, or a supervisor may look at production logs and randomly pick cases to review from there. So this eliminates the need or the possibility that somebody may be cherry picking cases, because we don't want that. So we want to make sure that there's some random selection there. Okay. As far as training and communication, our team uses some of the following approaches for training and communication. The first one is when our trainer attends trainings or receives information from the state, she'll review the training materials, and then she consolidates them into important highlights to pass on to the different eligibility teams. And that makes it easier for everyone to digest in more consumable bite-sized chunks, so that it's easier for them to implement into their work. So she may get a lot of material and then, like I said, put the highlights into an email and then point out that the desk aid is attached. On more complex items, she may actually go around to individual team meetings and explain things in person and actually go over those desk aids and resources that are available. Let's see, during hands-on training sessions with new workers, we do ask them to explain the wrap-up process back to their trainer to make sure that they understand the policy behind the eligibility decisions. And a wrap-up is a really great place to ensure that things are being done accurately. And it's important for staff to understand why those numbers are showing up in wrap-up and tie that connection to what the system is saying in order to, so that they can better identify when there is an error and when there is not. We emphasize teaching the new staff how to research and interpret policy themselves and work with live cases in CDMS as soon as possible upon completion of training. The last bullet here, our supervisors convene on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings to go over our current backlog and where they need help. We call this our quarterback meetings because it's all of our leadership staff who get together. So we get together and we go over the backlog, and we define our backlog as any work that's not completed. So it could have been a document that was dropped off that morning. So that is our definition of backlog. And we look at the number of staff who are out that day, the number of phone calls that need to be returned, the number of applications that are still unworked, how many pieces of mail that need to be addressed. And then we have a conversation about how, as an eligibility unit, all teams included, how are we going to tackle this work together? We really emphasize that all teams are going to rise together and all teams are going to sink together. So it's really important for us to work together to make sure that we all stay afloat. We do things like shifting staff when needed. So something that's happening just this week, we've got 2 staff from one team moving over to another team for a few days just to work their redeterminations. We have another team that went to a second team and pulled 5 Medicaid applications from them to assist them with that work. And so we do a lot of shifting of people, we do a lot of shifting of work in order to make sure that everybody remains timely, nobody feels like they're falling behind or struggling. And we'll even sometimes come to the conclusion that we need to do an all-hands-on-deck day where we say this specific team needs significant help. So on this specific day, every eligibility team is going to work together to bring them back up to speed with everybody else. So those quarterback meetings are really, really helpful for us to assess our overall workload and make sure that we're all remaining timely in our work. Okay. So we have a few other additional keys to our success that we wanted to share with you that have really worked well for us. One of them is following the 4 disciplines of execution framework. So Mesa County, we've been an active participant in business process reengineering work that was done with the Southern Institute and with Change and Innovation. And we've made many significant process changes in order to improve our efficiencies. But shortly after our work with Change and Innovation, we began following 4DX, or 4 disciplines of execution. And this framework really helped us remain focused on what our most important priorities are and allowed us to continue to seek opportunities for further improvement and then to sustain the gains that we had already obtained through our work with Southern Institute and Change and Innovation, because 4DX brings an added layer of accountability to everybody in the agency who is involved with 4DX. This is a methodology brought to us by Franklin Covey, if any of you are interested in seeking it out. It really is a simple, repeatable, and proven formula for executing your most important strategies in the midst of all the whirlwinds and all the busy work that can sometimes distract us in our workday. And for our department, we implemented it for every single member of our department, from the line level staff up to and including our executive director. We all make commitments, we all have goals, and we're all focused on making sure that we are attaining our highest priorities as an agency. For eligibility programs, that includes being accurate, that includes being timely. So it's just been a really good opportunity for us to continue that work that we already did with Southern Institute and Change and Innovation in a positive way moving forward with that added layer of accountability to make sure we stay on track. For our second point, we have something called lobby triage. And this is a station that we have in each of our buildings on our campus where workers, their eligibility workers, they're able to help clients with quick needs or schedule appointments with them for appropriate team meetings. So instead of having clerical staff up there who were kind of the middleman, we now have eligibility workers up there. And like I said, if it's a quick need, if somebody just needs a new copy of their redetermination, if they just have a question about when their benefits are going to issue, those kind of simple things, they're able to quickly address them at the window and allow the client to go on their way. If they have a more in-depth question, then we enter them into our workload management system we call our tracker, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And we have staff who are assigned to see walk-in clients. So if it's something more in-depth and we don't want to get into a big conversation at the front window, they can see somebody immediately as a walk-in client and get their needs addressed. And we found this has been really successful as an efficiency tool because we're not just telling clients, call your worker or leave them a note. And we've been able to, like I said, eliminate that middleman of the clerical person. So those FTE for clerical that had been manning the windows, we've been able to reassign them in other parts of the department to support other areas in our agency as well. The last item on here, our tracker, which I referenced earlier. This is a very, very simple workload management tool. When we started doing our business process reengineering, we really quickly recognized that we needed a tool to help us streamline and improve our processes and manage our work so that nothing fell through the cracks. And we looked for a lot of products that were already out there and found that they were either really, really expensive to buy or they had, high dollar monthly charges and fees that went along with them. We actually did find a few other counties who had awesome workload management tools, but unfortunately, for us to take their tools and customize them to our county would require us to have programmers on staff with our IT department. And unfortunately, Mesa County, we do not employ any programmers, so we had to look for something more simple that fit within our budget and was easy to work with. So we came upon a tool that was developed by a county in the state of Nevada, and it was just an access database that they were using as a workload management tool. And I just reached out to them and they literally emailed me their database. And our IT team, because it was just an access database, they were able to make some simple changes to tailor it to our needs. So the only cost to our department was IT's time in doing that customization, and then a few tweaks along the way just to make sure some of the reporting pieces worked and whatnot. But it has definitely served its purpose for us. We are able to track our phone call volume, our traffic, our lobby traffic, our paperwork flow, applications and redeterminations. It essentially creates an electronic staging area for each team to pull from and know what work needs to be done next. So all of our work is entered into the system. A worker can go in there and claim an item, work it, complete it, and then move on to the next item. We really emphasize the use of a pull system rather than a push system in Mesa County because we find that not only is this the most efficient way to manage our work, but it helps reduce the stress levels of our staff because they don't have big stacks of work on their desk anymore. They're just focusing on the one item at hand that they pulled from the workload management tool. They complete it and move on to the next item. So I think that's what I've got for you today.
Michelle, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. We have had some questions and comments come in, so I'm going to take a few minutes to run through those now. This first one actually references back to Rio Grande. This is a comment from Summit County. So in Summit County, there is a case manager that takes walk-ins every day, and each day is a different person. So that's a follow-up answer to our discussion about how they do walk-ins in Rio Grande County, given that they have their case base there. So thanks for that comment. And how many techs does a supervisor have on average? I believe that question was directed at Mesa County.
I believe our smallest team has 9 and our biggest team has 14.
Great. And another comment came in for you specifically, Mesa County. Love the 2 different methods and the great process innovation to allow supervisors to work off-site for review purposes. That one was referring back to Mesa County's practices and how they select cases for review and try to make it as random as possible, also without getting too complicated.
Right.
Question for you, Mesa County, about your quarterback meetings. How long do they typically last, and how long have you conducted these?
Oh gosh, we've probably been doing them maybe a year and a half, 2 years now. And then I would say they last anywhere from 10 minutes to 20 minutes, not super long. Because what we do is we have a whiteboard that we keep in one of our supervisor's offices. She has one of the larger offices, and so we all convene in there. And so every morning, the supervisors come in and they write down kind of like the state of their team. And so we could quickly review the board, and then we have a historical record of, when we're looking at it for today, we can see where we were at on Monday and compare to see if we're making any movement. And we also record, like I said, vacancies, like how many people each person has out that day. So let's say our blue team has 57 unworked redeterminations, and they happen to have 3 people on vacation and 2 called in sick. Then we might say, okay, well, we need to tackle those redeterminations before deadline. So let's take 1 person from the green team and shift them over to the blue team to assist with catching up those redeterminations to get us in a good place.
And then another question along with that is, do you remember a time when you didn't have these meetings and what the difference was like between then and now?
Yes, definitely remember when we didn't have these meetings. I would say we were much more siloed, and each team and supervisor really felt the weight and the pressure of just being responsible for trying to keep up on their own. And it was very imbalanced. We would have some teams that were in really, really good shape and other teams that were getting super behind. And you have to think about the client who's on the other end of every document and every application. And it's not fair to our clients for their application to be either processed fast or slow, depending on the team they happen to be assigned to. So this allows us to give better service to our customers. It reduces the stress of the staff because they're not in it alone. We know that at least 3 times a week, we're going to be shifting resources to ensure that there's fairness and balance across the team.
Great. A question about 4DX, Michelle. Is there any visual depiction or illustration of a unit or an individual's goals that are part of their accountability or 4DX approach that you'd be able to share? Or any visual resources you direct us to for that?
Actually, I mean, I could send pictures of my own, but if you were to Google 4DX scoreboards, you could find all kinds of resources on the internet, because those other agencies that have applied 4DX methodology use the scoreboards too. So how we hold people accountable, there are a couple of different ways. Every team has a scoreboard within their team where they mark each individual's progress towards meeting the goals and how it feeds up into that team's overall goals. And our teams hold weekly meetings to go over their goals and their measures to say, who accomplished what, who met their commitments, how did each person contribute to where we need to be heading. And then we also have division-wide scoreboards too, to show how the work of all the teams fed up into our ability to accomplish our division-wide goals too. So you could find them anywhere on the internet, but I would be happy to send you some photos of our scoreboards if you'd be interested.
Great.
We also have a spreadsheet type tracker too, where we just track people's commitments, like attending our meetings when we get together to discuss our goals and our measures. So we also hold staff accountable to actually showing up to those meetings and participating. So that's another way that we track their accountability.
Great. That's a great practice. Does Mesa County have a QA team? That's another audience question we have for you.
We're working towards that. Hopefully someday we'll have a QA team, but right now our quality assurance is really managed by our supervisors and our trainer.
All right. Can you provide a template for your access tracker tool?
Probably. I'd have to ask our IT department to make sure that I'm not an IT person, but I think I could. Is somebody wanting that in particular?
Yes, specifically Los Animas County is interested in seeing that.
Okay.
And I would be happy to make the connection later on, and after this presentation, we will be sharing materials with everyone from the presentation today that we won't necessarily be able to share the tracker tool widely in that on like the food policy portal where the presentation materials will be going, but I will definitely connect the two of you. And if anyone else has specific questions for the presenters offline, I'm happy to make connections for anyone to follow up on those things.
Sounds good.
All right. Any other questions from Mesa County? Go ahead and type them in. In the meantime, we're going to transition to our final portion of the presentation. I'm going to have Colleen Nieto from SNAP Quality Assurance give us an overview about the SNAP Quality Assurance team and also cover our key takeaways that we've been talking about through each of our county partners.
Thank you, Sharon. Excuse me. County shared some fantastic information during our visits, and we wanted to reiterate some of the key takeaways. And as Sharon said, to go over a little bit of what SNAP Quality Assurance does. What we exist to do is we are federally mandated to review a representative sample of all active and negative cases each month, and then the data we provide helps identify trends and measures the error rate for our state. The way that happens is that each month a random sample of active households, which are households who participated in the food assistance program by receiving and accessing benefits, is selected, as well as a CAFR sample, which is a selection of negative actions that were taken to deny or terminate benefits. We are required to complete 1,020 active reviews and 680 CAFR reviews annually. Our SNAP specialists, excuse me again, review all information available in the county case record and in CBMS. We conduct interviews with households that are selected for active review. Occasionally, they're phone interviews based on their allotment size, but the majority of them are face-to-face interviews. We generally go to the homes of clients so that we can accommodate and ensure that they're able to easily access or participate in our interviews as they're a requirement of eligibility. Once we do our interviews and have reviewed the information available from the county case file and CBMS, we gather that information, and using the Handbook 310, our reviewer guide, Title 7, which is the federal regulations, and our state regulations, Volume 4B, we review all the information against those, and for active reviews, any variances are reviewed to determine whether they're included or excluded. Included variances are then tested against the federal tolerance level, which is currently $38 for federal fiscal year 2018, and variances above that tolerance level are reflected in the performance error rate. For CAFR, we're reviewing the selected action and determining if that action was timely, accurate, and if the household is properly noticed. This is more of a pass-fail, so if any of those measures are not met, the review has to be cited as invalid, regardless of any subsequent actions that are taken after the initial negative actions taken. Some of our key takeaways from our visits are developing a pre-authorization practice. While that's not necessarily feasible, a cookie-cutter pre-authorization practice is not feasible for everyone across the state. Start with something that's manageable for your team. If it's manageable to do 100% pre-authorization reviews on new staff, then that's great. If you can only do 50%, whatever you can do to implement that for your particular county, it seems to be a very good practice that's helped reduce errors. Create levels of pre-authorization based on performance and experience, and especially utilizing wrap-up, making sure that everyone knows what wrap-up is, what those numbers represent, and at least takes a good look at it to make sure that every change that they've entered has been captured in wrap-up, and changes that should have been end dated are not reflected in wrap-up. Conducting case file reviews. In some of our travels, we met with counties who target specific elements. They look at trends where staff or QA has identified trends with shelter or income, and they focus on those elements for a period, and then they review entire cases post-authorization. Again, they identify trends that are found in case reviews. They also work on trends that QA has pointed out. They implement ongoing communication and training, as some of the presenters that we've heard, they consistently attend webinars, they share that information, they teach staff to look up and interpret policy, they review errors so that they can kind of develop an error prevention committee so that when looking at a specific error, it doesn't continue or it's not a perpetuated error. They've created a monthly process for reviewing policy updates, and they review the SNAP report card and Cupid, which also gives information on current trends and potential resolutions or solutions for those errors. Staff are given the tools that they need, as I said, to look up and interpret policy. To use these practices, sorry, wrong page. We received 10 keys to success from we've researched, 10 keys to success from the FNS with suggestions on things that were proven to be helpful in reducing the error rate. One of those was the top leadership commitment. An example of that is the innovative thinking from Mesa County 40X. We met with Arapahoe County, and their leadership is very involved with making sure that staff are trained and understand errors, and they meet with them regularly. And that falls into communication. All the counties that we met with have a very good method of communication, whether it's being a close team, doing stand-up meetings, sharing information as it comes in. Error review committees, that seems to be very helpful with identifying trends when there's an error that's identified from SNAP QA or during the county's individual review process, determining how that error started, what they can do to prevent that error going forward, and provide training as necessary. Data analysis. Arapahoe County has a very robust data analysis process where everything is reviewed internally, and then they also look at what SNAP QA provides. So that helps them to identify errors identify areas that are lacking. So they're able to address that with training or whatever they need to do on an individual or group level. Corrective action plans are no fun for any of us. And those are helpful in that we're able to see what we've done wrong, and it really makes us focus on what we can do to fix that going forward. Policy options, waivers, and initiatives. Colorado takes advantage of several of these. And of course, none are coming to mind at this minute, but there are several options, waivers, and initiatives that we do take advantage of. Case reviews, again, targeted reviews, as well as general reviews of all cases, as MESA does. Robust training program, and training doesn't necessarily have to be a formal, you don't necessarily have to have a formal training team, but someone who is qualified and able to train on different changes and updates to policy has been very helpful. Employee recognition seems to be something that all of these counties had in common that did really well. Again, Mesa and Arapahoe, for the larger counties, had very robust employee recognition programs where they tied flex scheduling, awards, different things like that to performance. You had to, for Arapahoe County in particular, you had to have you had to meet a certain standard as far as errors and performance went to be able to have maybe a work at home option or a flex schedule option. Change centers, Mesa again talked about how they have a lobby triage process with no middleman. Rio Grande also has that, and so talked about that in the sense that they process cases as applications as they come in and changes as they come in. Even though the document that we have cited is more than 10 years old, what we found with our visits to these counties is that their practices do closely align with these 10 keys. We heard again from 7 counties that employee recognition was important to their success, providing small prizes for top recognition or for top performance and recognition for that as well. And they're also using data to understand trends. To use these practices in your county, lessons learned from our materials will be emailed and available on the CDHS website shortly. This presentation will also be available on the portal under the QA/QI tab, as well as under the General Food Assistance Policy tab. If you'd like to contact us, my email address is colleen.nieto@state.co.us. And then food assistance policy is CDHS _ food stamp _ policy at state.co.us, and also Sharon Zanti at sharon.zanti@state.co.us.
All right, thank you, Colleen. I am going to go back to questions here, so please, we still have remaining time for questions, so please type them in if you have them. And as Colleen said, the materials from today will be shared shortly after this presentation. Colleen, can you talk more about Arapahoe County's data analysis?
I can talk a little bit about it. I know that Arapahoe County does a lot of internal reviews. They look at new employees. They do a lot of QA reviews for their current or ongoing employees. They look at trends. They identify those, and they develop plans going forward. For example, when we were there, they had recently done a targeted month of shelter training to focus on shelter errors, and then they were doing one on income. So I know that they can definitely provide more information on that, and I can solicit that from them specifically on what they're measuring. But I do recall that they had a very robust QA process with leads, supervisors, and the QA team, and they definitely analyzed the data that they got from all of those reviews to go forward and identify trends and improve quality.
And Robert, one thing I'll add on to that is across the different counties we visited, we saw a wide range of data analysis. So a larger county may have a more complex system. They may have more tools in place that they're able to use to automatically track data. But we noticed that from the larger counties to the smaller counties, data analysis was being used. And it can be as simple as like the case file reviews. That's a use of data and using that to identify trends, reviewing the SNAP monthly report card or the QFIT documents to learn more what's going on at the state level, and then applying that to trainings or whatever is going on with your specific team. So I think one of the main themes today is that not all these practices are going to be applicable for every single person in the same way, but starting with what is manageable for your team, whether that's starting some type of data analysis process or pre-authorization process, wherever you can start with whatever is manageable right now is the best place to go versus thinking that you have to start with the most complex system in order to be successful. All right, we'll pause to allow any more questions to come in. If you have questions for any of our presenters today or about any of the material, go ahead and get them in now. All right, well, I'm not seeing any more questions at this time. Thank you all for typing in your questions. We have a lot of great comments on here, and thank you so much to our presenters. We had Douglas County, Rio Grande, Mesa County, and Colleen Nieto from SNAP QA. Everyone, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Thank you to the other counties that allowed us to come visit and learn from them along the way. And thank you to all of you for participating and asking smart questions and taking away this information back to your teams. If you have follow-up questions for us, you can always reach out to me. I'll go back to this slide with all of our contact information. And thank you all for joining. We will be in touch with follow-up materials, and they'll be available online shortly.
And there's a survey that should pop up at the end of the training. It's a 3-question survey. We would love to have your feedback going forward so we can implement that and perform our own data analysis.
Thank you.